What's up guys, in today's video I'm going to be talking a little bit about Tesla Model 3s and the different types of things that you should be looking for if you're wanting to buy a used one. There's been a lot of variations in them since they first came out in late 2017, and this one right here is a 2023 standard range model. So in today's video I'm just going to go over a few of the different things that you want to watch out for if you're looking to buy a used Model 3, especially since there's been a ton of them that have hit the market since rental fleets like Hertz have started putting them out there, and people have just owned these things for a few years and are looking to sell them to buy the new ones. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, so when it comes to the exterior, you're going to want to make sure that first of all, you're getting the right car. This right here is the Tesla Model 3 standard range, and some dead giveaways that it is one thing down here, these Aero hubcaps that you'll see on the 18-inch wheels. That'll tell you that it's either a standard range or a long range, and not a performance model. The performance models will come with different wheels that are a little bit larger and don't have these plastic hubcaps around them. Another thing you want to pay attention to are the badging around here. In the back on the standard range, you won't see any sort of dual motor badging. It'll just be plain. And if you're looking to see if it's a performance model or not, you'll see a dual motor badge with a red underline below it. And also, I want you guys to be careful too if you're going out there and buying somebody's other car that previously owned this, because the owner may have just put on a badge that isn't actually a performance model. For that, you'll need to go into the screen in the settings, and you can check in there to see what model you're specifically getting. Things to look for there are the battery size, so whether it's a standard range, a long range, and there's also a mid-range option that was available for a few months. And you'll also be checking for the amount of motors that it has. It can either be a rear-wheel drive model like this one, or it can have two motors, one in the front and rear on the long ranges. So typically on most cars, you wouldn't have to think much about looking at the roof when you buy it, but with the Tesla, you definitely want to. And on the Model 3, all of them come with a glass panoramic roof. And so you're gonna want to check and make sure that there aren't any chips or any cracks in the glass, because that can be a pretty pricey repair. So that's something that you might not immediately notice because most people aren't looking up while they drive. But when you do test drive this, take a look around and make sure that you don't see any cracks or anything in the glass. And now you join me down low, right next to the front bumper of the car, and you'll notice something on this. It does not have any ultrasonic parking sensors. That was something that Tesla removed last year in the 2023 models, so you may not see that on the car that you're looking to buy. In that case, Tesla has updated their software with something called Tesla Vision, which will use the cameras to kind of give you a rough idea of what's around the car, but it isn't as reliable as the parking sensors once were. So if parking sensors are something that you're really looking for, or that's kind of a deal breaker on a Model 3, you might want to look back at something that's like a 2022 or earlier. All right, and you may be wondering, why are we still down here by the bumper? But this time now we have the lights on, because there's actually a difference there as well. Tesla, midway through the Model 3's life cycle, actually updated the headlights on these. Now they're using matrix LED, and I'll show a photo on screen so you guys can kind of see the difference between the old ones and the new ones. But essentially these ones are better headlights, and so you're going to want to try to find one with these on them. They also might get some additional features later on in updates, such as automatic dimming of the high beams and zoning it around certain cars. That's something that the EU has, but here in the US we don't have regulations that allow that quite yet. But maybe in the next year or two, that can be software unlocked on these matrix LEDs. All right, and the last thing you want to look for on the exterior is the power trunk. This is a nice feature to have. It's more of a convenience and a luxury than anything, but it's still really helpful. So then when you're grabbing all your gear, now I have my camera bag, you can just click a button, walk away, and it'll automatically close without you having to slam the trunk, which on the older models did take a good amount of force to close. So on the old Model 3s, you'll have just these struts and they don't have any sort of power or anything going to them. But on the newer models, then you actually have power that opens and closes these. And now as we move along into the interior of the car, there's also some notable differences that have been made in the 2021 and later models that you might want to look for on a used model. Things like this wood trim over here, along with this little aluminum looking thing that I think is plastic that used to only be over on the dash right above your steering wheel. And something else you'll notice are these matte buttons. And so they used to be glossy and kind of fingerprinty, but now it's thankfully matte, because you know gloss and fingerprints do not go well. And one other thing that also changed was the center console on the inside. That got a little bit of a refresh. So again, no more gloss black. If you're buying this from like a rental fleet, let's say, that's going to be a lot better for durability than the jet black would have been. And one last thing too to take note of is the dual pane glass. This will help out with sound isolation and keeping the cabin a little bit quieter while you're on the road. But one thing to note too, is that the rear does not get dual pane glass. These ones are still single paned on this model. You'll have to go up to something like the brand new Highland Refresh Model 3 for 2024. Okay, and now we're in the actual interior, and I guess I don't need sunglasses anymore. And now I'm going to be talking about the rear seats briefly, because on the standard range models, they used to not come with heated rear seats. But on the new standard range models in 2023, they all come standard with them. So that is one thing to keep in mind if you're buying a standard range model that's earlier than 2023. Tesla also had a software update that you could software unlock these rear seats if you paid extra money on the standard range models, but not every owner probably did that. So maybe just keep that in mind if you're going to buy an older standard range model and you haven't factored that into the price of the car. And let me also just be clear that all the long range models and performance models of the Model 3 got the rear heated seats. It was just a standard range that they turned them off through the software unless you paid extra up until obviously the 2023 model year. Moving on to the internals of this car, the battery pack is one of the biggest things you want to look out for when you're buying a used Model 3. This model right here, again, is a standard range, and so that means it comes with an LFP battery, which means that it can be fully charged up to 100% whenever you want to, but it also charges a little bit slower at only 150 kilowatts compared to the long range and performance models. Those models use a different type of battery chemistry that's only able to be charged up to about 80% on a daily basis, and you don't want to be charging it constantly up to 100% for battery degradation reasons. Those ones, however, can actually charge up to 250 kilowatts maximum at superchargers, so keep that in mind if you do really just want something that charges up really quickly, but you don't mind losing that 20% or so of range on a daily basis. At the end of the day, with battery degradation, you're really just looking at how many miles of usable range you have compared to what it initially started at. So on the Model 3, a good idea is to go inside the screen and see about how many estimated miles of range you can get out of it and compare that to what it had when it was brand new. Usually Tesla's estimates are a little bit over optimistic, and so I'd usually lower what they initially think the range is and what you're actually getting by a little bit, but still keep that in mind as you're buying the car. In order to do an actual battery degradation calculation, you would have to go into the screen, put it into service mode, and then you can let the car run a full test. That can be a little bit tough to do if you're just at a car dealer for 30-40 minutes and trying to test drive it and see what it's like. So one other thing I could recommend is going over to a supercharger, plugging it in and getting it fully topped up to 100% battery and seeing what that range is. That will be a good estimator of how many miles you actually have left in this pack. Keep in mind though that Tesla's batteries do a pretty good job over the long run though with degradation, so I wouldn't be worried too much with it, but do expect some over the course of a few years or however many thousand miles have been put on it through either rental use or maybe a single owner. Something also to keep in mind on these newer Model 3s is that some of them started receiving heat pumps in 2021 and later. So this model will have a heat pump up here in the front, and that heat pump enables better efficiency to heat up the cabin and keep it warm. So in the winter, you won't be losing as much range if you have one of the newer models that have this. This is something that you should especially be looking for if you're in a colder climate. So if you're in Canada or something, or you're just in a colder part of the US, you definitely want to try to look for a Model 3 that does have the heat pump. So again, 2021 and later models. And that's going to help out a lot with just increasing your efficiency in the car and getting the most amount of range that you can out of the battery pack. So one of the last things you want to look for on a used Tesla is the different types of autopilot that it may come included with. So there's 3 different types that you'll likely have, either basic autopilot, enhanced autopilot, or you'll have full self-driving. All of that is enabled through these cameras up front, which are on every single Model 3, so you don't have to worry about that. And it also has all these side repeater cameras and the B-pillar cameras. That all comes standard. But the thing you need to pay attention to is what type of MCU you have. If you have MCU 2, then that means that likely you're going to be running Autopilot 2.5, which does not work with full self-driving. So you could not buy the full self-driving package and expect it to work without getting some sort of a hardware retrofit. On this Model 3, it is a newer unit, so it's MCU 3, which means that it does have the full self-driving computer, and that can be checked when you go into the vehicle settings. Basic autopilot will just be keeping your car between the lanes and making sure that you're at a safe following distance from the person in front of you. Kind of like traffic-aware cruise control, but with lane centering as well. So if you get the enhanced autopilot package on the Model 3 and it comes with that, and you see it on the center screen, then that means that you'll get additional features such as auto lane changes in addition to the basic autopilot, and you'll also get Smart Summon, which can allow you to pull the car forward and backwards, and also sometimes drive to you in a parking lot. And one more thing to keep in mind too is your car may say that it has the full self-driving computer, but that doesn't mean that you necessarily have the software to actually run it. that might be an additional thing that you have to pay for, or if a previous owner had that, then they have to transfer it over to you. Full self-driving is pretty pricey right now, but it could be worth it depending on your commute or if you really like those features. So as you can see, there's quite a few different nuances with the Model 3. This model over here, again, is a 2023 and is the last of this generation style, and they just refreshed it for 2024. And so that means that there's about 6 years of these Model 3s floating around on the used market. And so you're gonna wanna make sure that you have whatever features that you're looking for. But with that, thank you guys for watching this video. Thank you to my friend Hunter Elliott for standing out in the cold. If you see the video shaking a little bit, it's because we've been out here in this January weather for a few hours now. So thank you again for helping me out with this, and also for lending me your car to make this video. With that, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time on Tech Device News.